Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. That's great. All right. So this actually is a very popular topic. The target for this is pretty much could be those of you maybe you've never applied for a grant. Maybe you've applied for a lot of grants, but they're too much work. Maybe you want to know about the secret sauce that others seem to know about. But this webinar is about getting ready for grants. And the preparation, as we know, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So you might think that grant writing is just, you see the grant and you dive right in. But I'd have to disagree with you there. It's like running a race. You have to get ready if you're in with a chance. You have to prepare. If I said ready, set, go, you might not be ready. But if I said, let's prepare, and then I said ready, set, go, you'd definitely be ready. All right, you do your stretches, you've got your music playlist. Let's get to it. Okay, so recording is in progress, as I've said. This is presented by the Act Local program. We have an Act Local website with events and training there, and as I've said, the YouTube channel from the Town Team movement. Who am I? That's the existential question. So my name is Esther Bliss. I work for the Town Team movement. I'm the Wheatbelt coordinator for the Act Local program, which is a program the Town Team movement runs on behalf of Department Communities, which helps any volunteer involving organisation in the Wheatbelt, that's VIOs in the Wheatbelt, as well as the Town Team movement that supports town teams themselves, LGAs, and other relevant stakeholders. In terms of my involvement in the community, so I've had my finger in a few pies, specifically since I moved to Northern 15 years ago, co-funded the Northern Town Team, involved 10 years, Northern Women Business, Northern Hockey Club, and then informally, maybe the theatre, the regional gym. And my favourite saying is genuinely, I'm in, what are we doing? So the Town Team movement, I'll give you a bit of an introduction of what we are. So the Town Team movement is a community-led movement that helps local people improve the places where they live, work, and gather. So we support residents, businesses, volunteers, and local governments to create stronger, safer, more connected main streets, neighbourhoods, and towns. So in simple terms, it's about locals making their place better rather than waiting for someone else to do it. We help communities grow. We help what we call local town teams, which are grassroots action groups. We provide training, tools, mentoring, practical resources. We support placemaking projects and encourage quick wins and things like that. Okay. What we are is also an underarching support to the over 165 town teams throughout WA and Australia, a couple overseas as well. And what we like to call our town teams, they're just full of local doers. So people that aren't passive, someone else should do it, more the get up and do it themselves kind of people. We encourage local governments to shift from doing things to the community or doing things for the community to actually a mind shift of doing things with or even enabling and getting things done by the community instead. There's a lot more buy-in and a lot more satisfaction that way. So we inspire and support people to behave as active citizens, as we've got there, from the passive consumer on the left-hand side to the individual doer, the team member, civic leader, all the way to an impact maker. So the Town Team movement has kind of four arms to it. We have our town teams there up on the left. We also provide consulting services to whoever will have us, really, local governments, relevant agencies, federal, and also state. We also work with positive partners. So some of those might be Main Roads, for example, RAC, Department of Communities. So we work with positive partners. At the moment, one of the things we also have is the Streets Alive grant, which is a grant that enables local governments and or community groups to apply for funding to make their streets safer. And that can be done via a variety of ways. And then we have a website, Streets Alive, which has more information. It's a great grant. And we also deliver in-person and online education training, just like today. Okay. The ACT Local Programme, as I'll briefly mention, is a programme funded by the Department of Communities. What that does is provide a local person in the region. So there's Wheatbelt, Kalgoorlie, Boulder and Pilbara. And what we do is coordinate the resources, networking opportunities, training and funding support. So there's only one of us, but we really are there and available for any community group that needs a help. And what we do is tends to enable rather than doing the do. So things like this help people with grants rather than actually writing the grant for them. Okay, so it's an amazing program. It's running for 3 years, so I've got another 18 months. And it's really quite fantastic. It's my dream job, to be honest. Love it. And I have to also finally mention the Festival of Doing that the Town Team Movement is running on the 7th and 8th of May in Bentley. It's quite incredible. And the benefits also, we've got, what have we got? Things like on the Thursday evening, we've got a networking event, but on the Friday, the actual Festival of Doing from 9 till 4. It has community and place change makers co-creating safe and public spaces. You'll learn about urban regeneration, Main Street activation, innovative approaches to community participation. There's just so many different bits and pieces to that conference, as well as in the evening, the placemaking awards as well. So the benefit for anyone who's in the regional area is there's a very, very generous travel subsidy. Up to $1,000 is available for, I think if you're less than 300 Ks, but still in the region, up to $750. So that could be your accommodation and also petrol and or flights or whatnot. So yeah, really, really great opportunity to attend the Festival of Doing. So there was also a website there, which I'll share with you at the end. But let's crack on with today's show. That's what we're here for. So just an overview of what we're going to talk about today. Some grant-ready stats. Love my stats, not really. We're going to look at what grant-ready is really about, what wish lists and budgets are, grants for sponsorship, top 5 sponsorship tips, some of the tools that I recommend, and then obviously, if nothing else, my high recommendation of what you can do, and also some of the resources that I've sent you and will share with you as well to make your grant, the next grant you apply for, so much easier. Okay, and this little thing here is a template, which is the 4 templates that I've sent you already, but I may have some others as well. So if you're wondering what that little template needs to be, you'll get the info there. All right. So insanity. Sanity is can be defined as doing the same thing and expecting a different result. But as you know, if you keep doing the same thing, you will get the same result over and over. You actually have to change what you're doing. And I would congratulate you today by turning up and starting yourself on that journey, because it will get you a different result. Today will, if nothing else. The average hours spent preparing for a grant without being grant ready, I would say approximately at least 10 hours. I don't know if you guys would agree with that, but in terms of, finding the right grant, identifying a project for your grant, calculating your budget, getting your quotes, resources, in-kind donations, maybe some supporting letters, and then looking at the application and the guidelines, I would say you would easily spend at least a day doing these kind of things. And when you've only got a limited amount of time to apply for a grant, the clock is ticking. Okay, hours saved by being grant ready. I couldn't come up with an actual statistic, but I would say lots. And that's true. What is grant ready? So it's about having the key pieces of information at your fingertips, so you can reduce the time spent doing the same thing over and over and over. Why you should be grant ready? Well, you really owe it to yourself and who you're applying for on behalf of. It basically puts you ahead of the competition. It will save you a lot of time. And some of this can also be delegated to people within your group. So it's not just the same person applying for the grants over and over. We can slice off the grant ready preparation and share the love. It basically, it's a way of ensuring that you're not spent time mopping up the ocean, which is a complete waste of time. You're actually spending your grant writing time on things that will make a difference. So people like to do the same thing, even when they're shown an alternative. And that's basically because they're comfortable in doing what they're doing. It's a status quo bias. It's comfort and familiarity. And it seems easier to just do the same after all, because the alternative is, well, it's an unknown. So grant ready. So this is the first template that you would have sent. And it really seems, when I explain it, very simple, and it really is. But I would challenge you, how many times, if you're applying for a grant, have you had to look up your ABN or your email? You've got to type that in. Or maybe your Facebook page link, or 25 words about yourself. Basically, the first part of being grant ready is to have one document with all of those details ready. And that's one of the attachments I've sent you there. So things like, I mean, and I'm guilty of it as well. I applied for a grant over the weekend and I was scrubbing around going, oh, what's the ABN again? And, you know, I could spend just 5 minutes doing that. And then, Facebook, I'll just go and open Facebook, and you just, yeah. Let today be the last time you ever look up your ABN, your address, your bank details, your Facebook link, your bank account numbers. I challenge you to fill in your grant ready template, and you'll never have to look them up again. You will just open your grant ready template and they are all there for you. Okay. I know it seems very obvious, but yeah. So you've also things like your standard hashtags, any organizational tags that you might use. You know, you type them in every time, but if you can just copy and paste them in, you'll save a lot of time. Okay. Your bank account details are listed on there as well. You have your, we've got an introduction of your group, so a 25-word introduction. Don't be shy. I do use ChatGPT, but I would recommend using ChatGPT or any other AI with a pinch of salt, in that you would prompt it for a 25-word description, and then you would possibly edit yourself. So what ChatGPT and other AIs can do for you is that you can create an account, a free account, and you might load up to your account some information about yourself, your community group. Maybe it's a newspaper article, maybe you have your projects you've completed, maybe you have already your 50 words about yourself, all these kind of things. And if you load it up into ChatGPT as source documentation, then when you create a new project within ChatGPT, it will use that source information to write something that is relevant for yourself, and it will save you a lot of time there. You don't have to keep reinventing yourself on a new ChatGPT or a new prompt in AI. So you can also, when you've completed a grant, you could load it up into there. So you have, and let's face it, a lot of grants have similar type questions, you know, in terms of what outcomes. And if you're dealing with the same community group each time that you're volunteering for, you're going to have similar types of deliverables and similar demographics that you're involving. And so ChatGPT or any other AI can build up a picture of what you do to assist you, not write for you, but assist you in becoming grant ready and filling some of those sort of standard questions that you will have. In terms of capacity, one of the questions you might find in a grant is what capacity do you have within your team to deliver XYZ? Well, if you've already got grants in there that you have people that delivered, then you can quite easily go into ChatGPT and say, provide a summary of capacity based on Sarah Dominic and Barbara, and keep it to 50 words. And there you go. There's your capacity question, quite simply, as long as you check it, because ChatGPT isn't actually 100% accurate. It will claim that Barbara's a physician, and she might not be. So the grant ready template, we've got the introduction to your groups, potential referees. So to save yourself time, rather than wait for a grant to come up, I suggest that you reach out to potential referees now when you're preparing for general grants, and just touch base with them to say, hey, in the future, our community group, we're going to apply for possible grants. I just want to give you the heads up that would you be interested in being a referee? And for a referee, that's just simply their name and contact details. And then if you're possibly successful in the grant, they may be contacted. Now, you then, when you're actually in the time of applying for the grant, you would just reach out to them and say, hey, do you remember I asked you? And it saves time in terms of not having to explain yourself. They've already, got the heads up and are quite willing to help you. The next part of the grant ready template is a list of past projects. If you're anything like myself, you possibly have success amnesia, and you forget the kind of projects and activities that your group has done. So what the grant template prompts you for is just to note down those past activities that you have delivered. So we've got project name there, date, so month and year. You'd be surprised how quickly you forget when you did that. The numbers and demographics that were involved in that activity. So it might be possibly seniors or youth or any of those demographics that you need to keep an eye on. Numbers especially are quite useful. 2 or 3 dot points about what the success and the highlights of that project were, and a Google Drive link. So I would highly recommend that if you're not already, you have a Gmail account which comes with a Google Drive where you can store all your projects online. We actually do a very simple webinar on tips and tricks for sorry, I'm losing my words today, for online and better ways to communicate within your community group. And so every time I do a grant, I save it and I just put the whole folder up on the drive. And then when I come to update my grant ready template, I just put a link to that project so that if I want further detail, I can go in there. Anyone can go in there within the community group that has access, and they can see all the detail there. And it just gives you, when you're looking to apply for a grant and you've got this grant ready template filled in and open, you can just look and say, are there any past projects that might be relevant to this grant in terms of maybe the demographics? If you're applying for a seniors grant, have we done anything before that, correlates to that demographic? So it's not supposed to be a huge wordy piece about the grant, but just a little nudge to remind you. The next part of the grant ready template is supporting letters. Many grants might ask for supporting letters or any additional info, and I would highly recommend adding a PDF of a supporting letter from one or more people. A bit like potential referees, I would start today in terms of just reaching out to some people to see whether they would be comfortable in sending you a supporting letter for any particular grants. Obviously, it depends on what the grant is, but how I would put it is contact maybe I won't say the local Northern Chamber of Commerce because she'll get inundated with letters, but someone in your community, and you just reach out and say, hey, we're looking to apply for some grants later in the year, and we wondered if something suitable comes up, you'd be interested in providing a supporting letter. And they would initially go, maybe. Then you add, we'll provide you with the supporting letter in an editable format so you can have a look at it and then be able to send it back to us. And then they're going to say, yeah, that's fine. So I would never ask for a supporting letter without providing one to the person that I'm requesting it from, because you're much more likely to get a positive return, and they will have a lot more time to do that. When people ask me for a supporting letter and they don't provide me with anything or any context, I tend to not be able to do that for them. But ChatGPT, again, is a very good source of creating a draft supporting letter. And on the actual grant ready templates, I think the actual page talks about, if I'll just open it here, you ask for, already, here we go, scroll down on my little screen here, a supporting letter. So ChatGPT, I would like a supporting letter for a local chamber of commerce that supports economic development and mental health benefits of such and such a grant for this such and such community. And these are the reasons why. And you just give 3 dot points, put in ChatGPT, and it will give you a supporting letter that you can then edit yourself and then send to your person that you've given prior notice to. And you probably will get that supporting letter back a lot quicker than if you just cold called and asked for a supporting letter. So there you go. You saved yourself time already. So I'll just get rid of this one. Okay. So that's the grant ready template. It seems so easy, and it is. It's just prompts so that you're prepared and you will save time. I've had people who haven't wanted to apply for a grant because they said, oh, the first 10 pages is all like, bank details and blah, blah, blah. And as you can see, yeah, it does take time, but if you put in the work, and anybody can do this, it doesn't have to be a grant writer, as I said. So that's our first template. Any questions on that from anyone at all so far? No? All right, I'll move on. So that's the kind of the admin side of being grant ready. We're going to move on to the wish lists, which is great. It's like Christmas, a wish list. And then also budgets. And the good news is these are part of processes that can be delegated again. And as I said, I'll do these things before the next grant comes up. And they don't need to take a lot of time, but a little bit of time, once a week or even once a month means that when you get these grants that pop up, you're pretty much ready for them. Okay, so the next template that we have is an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know what level of Excel you are, what level of competence you are, but we've done this template so that it gives you an example tab, and then it gives you a blank tab. So you can see what kind of things you can put in and move on. So the front page of the grant ready template is an example of wish list items, and then it provides you with a blank one. It gives you an example budget with things written in, and then it also gives you a next tab, a blank one. And then also some examples of in-kind donations, which are very important to include in grants. And then it gives you a blank one as well. And then you can, of course, copy these budgets for every different projects that you do. And then also use them, if you get the grant, to act as an acquittal to record the items that you claimed you were going to buy with the grant, and then what those are the ones that you have and what the prices were. So it's really just a great source of being grant ready, really. So the wish list. So the first tab, a wish list. So a wish list is like a Christmas list of all the things that your community group would love to spend money on if they had lots of money. The wish list doesn't need to be tied to a particular grant or particular project. It's a list of everything, a Christmas list. And I would encourage groups to sit down with a cup of tea and just go, right, what do we want? If we had loads of money, what do we want? Not 2 chairs, not 1 table, but seriously, what do you need for your community group to flourish? If you're doing market stores and promotion, you need a I was going to say a TP. You need a marquee. You need a very simple marquee, possibly branded, that will these kind of things. So the wish list, you sit down and you just simply put down maybe common items. So we've got gazebo here, maybe a PA system, maybe you need some chairs, something you would also spend money on, printing, venue hire. Maybe you're going to do a morning tea or cupcakes you would need, sausages. Maybe you would need If you're doing a mural, so you need an artist, you would need approvals, all these kind of things. So the wish list are items that make up larger projects, okay? And you just go crazy, anything you want. But then what it does is you then put down whether it's equipment or a service. You then take those line items and you look and you get quotes. You get quotes now for a gazebo, for a PA system. You get quotes and then you mark in there whether they're GST or not. And what the template has for you, the blank one, is when you put in, say, $100 for something and you put, yes, it's got GST, it will automatically in the next column, it's a very simple field in there, it will calculate what that is less GST for you. Because a lot of community groups, if you're not registered for GST and you get a grant, they won't give you the GST component for it. So if you, I won't do the GST calculations in my head. So say, for example, you applied for a $10,000 grant, potentially you might not get $1,000 worth of GST in that grant. Because unless you're registered for GST, of course, then you will. So just consider that when you're looking at some of your expenses, you will have to find the GST component of those because the grant will not fund them. Okay, so that's why in the spreadsheet, it has an extra column to calculate what they are, excluding GST. Now, if you have, you put in a line item there and you put, no, it doesn't have GST, then it will show the full cost there. And then if you scroll to the bottom of those columns, when you do it in the budget, it will total it up. Okay, I can explain that further if people need. But the notes is very detailed notes in the template there. So this is your wish list, just a list of all the equipment. And it means that people can go off and get various quotes. And then you put it in here so that you have it. Because a lot of time when you're looking at grants is getting quotes for things. And if you do that now, and you could revise it, there's a date field in there. So you can put when you got the quote for them. So you can see, is that quote, more or less valid? Just saves you a lot of time, which is all about what today is for. Right. So when you have completed your wish list, we also have a project on a page. So a project on a page, which was one of the attachments I've sent you, is basically a summary. So everyone in your community groups knows what the particular project that you're going to apply for is about, okay? It knows what problem you're trying to solve by getting this grant, who the target audience is, the resources, and so forth. So if your wish list includes, so if you have a project or activity coming up, you then move to the next stage, which is to do a project on a page or a POP. It's just a one page, it's very, very simple, which we'll go through shortly. And then also develop some kind of budget for it. Okay. So project on a page. First thing, and again, it seems very obvious, but we put down the project title, give it a title, a summary, just a couple of sentences about what the project's about, and then the project leads. Now, for your community group, I recommend having at least one, probably two project leads for every project that you're going to apply for a grant. Because if you don't have a named person, then potentially that grant's, if you get funding, is just going to float around and you'll have no one to drive it. So what the POP or the project on a page does is take you from, a group of wish list items to, okay, what is the specific project that we want funding for? Who's going to lead it? What's the start and the end date of it? Why are we doing it? So, what's the problem we're addressing? Who's going to benefit from it? And all of these things actually lead into the grant as well, or the grant that you will find. So at this stage, you still might not have a grant for it, but you're just clarifying what the project is about so you can see if it's got legs and, more importantly, if it's got leads. Who will benefit from this project? So that will help you look for the right kind of grant. So if it's a project that's going to benefit seniors, then you would possibly look at a Seniors Week grant, or if it's art-based, then something from Department of Communities or the arts grants. who will benefit, what resources do we need for this grant? And that will help in terms of what your budgeted items will be. What are the great things that will happen because of this project? So what are the outcomes going to be from this? You need to start just maybe 2 or 3 dot points, that's all. So that, again, the community group are all on the right page about why you're doing it and what are the benefits going to be from it. The rest of the items on the project page are potential collaborators. So when you're applying for grants, funding bodies are very keen on collaborations, very, very keen. One that comes to mind, obviously, is the National Volunteer Week grant, where you can, as an individual group, apply for $1,000. If you collaborate with up to 4 others, you can potentially pool a grant worth $5,000. And yeah, so even if you're not getting, there's not a grant for funding others, funding bodies really look quite strongly, favorably on, or if you're collaborating with the Arts Society or whoever. The next one is how we measure success. So how will you know if the project is successful? So you go back to your outcomes and see, well, what are the outcomes? How are we going to measure those? Like, for example, if you're applying for a mental health grant from Australia Post, how are we going to measure people's mental health? Well, one of those ways might be, we'll do a survey at the beginning for all the participants on specific, maybe mental health questions about how they, whether they're comfortable, in if it's an arts grant, maybe how comfortable they are performing or being present. And then at the end of the grant, when you do the survey, you measure those things again, maybe involve parents, like how attitudes might have changed for your child if they suddenly part of a grant that did theatre funding and things like that. So they don't have to be too specific, but maybe just a couple of dot points that will help seek the right grant for you. This is a very important one. What is in scope and what is out of scope? So, for example, I had a grant where we were putting in flower boxes on the main street, planter boxes, and I made it quite clear that what was in scope was creating, putting the boxes on the main street. What wasn't in scope was doing any more for any other businesses. What was in scope was putting the plants in there. What was out of scope was maintaining them over a long period of time. So what was in scope is finding someone else to take those on. What was out of scope was, we're not doing this forever. So the project on a page really helps someone, for example, like myself, who's got great ideas, and it reassures the rest of the group, this is the project that we're talking about. We identify the risks in it. So what are the risks there might be with this project? I know maybe it won't be supported. The event won't be supported. Maybe, we're going to spend too much money or the inclement weather. Well, you identify what the risks might be, and then how are you going to address those specific risks? So it's all about thinking about these things up front. So it might not be supported. Okay, what are we going to do about that? Well, make sure we advertise, make sure we collaborate. What if we run out of money? Well, what we're going to do is make sure that we keep to budget and ensure that we don't go over budget. What about the weather? Well, what we're going to do is prepare for an alternative venue. And these are all things that will help you when you apply for your grant to think of the risks, because funding bodies are very keen to ensure that you have thought about these things rather than, oh, we're going to do this wonderful market in the middle of town in the middle of June, which shows you haven't really considered inclement weather and a whole other things as well. So again, like the grant template, the project on a page is a series of prompts to make you think about the type of information that will help you be grant ready and write a better grant when it comes to it. And of course, in the project on a page might be a rough timeline. That might not be, we're going to start in January and end in February. It's just a timeline in terms of, preparation will take this couple of months, but the event will be, take a week. And so overall, the project, the commitment is maybe 4 months. So again, it shows the group what the project's about, what are the commitments, what's in scope, and what are the risks. So everyone's on the same page, quite literally. Okay, so that's the project on a page template. Are there any questions on that at all? Nope. Okay, I'll move on. Budgets. So budgets is really about how much money do you need? And the reason you need to set the budget before you even apply for a grant, because you need to know how much money you need so you know what kind of grant to apply for. There's nothing worse than seeing a grant and then suddenly scrabbling around for, oh, that might fit this project. Well, how much is that going to cost? I don't know. And there's no point in, if you know that a project is going to need $10,000, well, there's certainly no point in scrubbing around preparing for a grant that's only up to $5,000. So preparing a budget and all of these things is best done a long time prior. A budget's basically essential to know exactly how much money you will need to run a program, event, or activity. So without a wish list and then without a budget, you will spend potentially a lot of time researching something that won't be suitable for you. So get quotes, then you can start tweaking your budget. Look at in-kind donations, and we'll get to what those are. What's the base budget, so that you know what's the minimum you'll need, and then maybe, if you were to get any more funding, what other things might you want to include, and what things can we possibly drop off the budget if you find that, once you put all those individual things from your wish list together, they actually make $5,500. Okay, so really we need to make sure we have a budget ready for a $5,000 grant or a $1,000 grant. So you can do all this before you even know what the grant is, which will, like I said, pre-planned budget can be done at any time. And also do bear in mind that GST shortfall that I referred to earlier. And also what I find, this is a good tip, is on your blank budget page, I always have at least probably 4 or 5 things that I'm going to apply for every budget. So they are always included. So that might be things like meta advertising. So if it's an event, I will always put in at least $100 for sponsored advertising on Facebook. That's a given. My default template also might be, if it's a morning tea, for example, then I know that I'm always going to need an event application fee for the local government. So that's always in there. I need posters printed. Well, that's always going to be in kind, but I know that's going to be a given. So you get to build up your kind of default. If you think of the budget like a shopping list, you're always going to need your butter, your eggs, milk, that kind of stuff, and bread. And then each project will be slightly different depending on what the overall recipe. I just made that up. I thought that was quite good, actually. Yeah. So yeah, that's how your budget works. Your base ingredients, and then things that you would add depending on what the particular budget is. Okay, so that's really always useful. Okay. Right. So you've got your wish list, and then you've got the project on a page, and then you can create your budget. And as I said, you don't even know what a grant is yet, but you can prepare a budget for your particular project. So if it's what we've got here, we've got an event in the main, let's say an event in the middle of Northern. And so we know that we're going to put in our venue hire, because there'll be LVA venue hire. There'll be an event application fee that's got to go in. Then we're going to have 2 types of entertainment. We're going to have to hire some chairs and tables. We're going to do a sausage sizzle. So we know we're going to get the sausages either from the local butcher, if you have one, or your local supermarket or whatnot. And then your soft drinks. Your event insurance, that's always a given. If you do one-off insurance, or if you have your public liability, which is an annual thing. Interesting point. Your annual insurance is an operational cost, but a one-off event insurance is not, in terms of a grant. So you can't normally, depends on the grant, read the guidelines and whatnot. You can't get a grant to cover any operational costs of your community group, like general volunteer insurance and stuff like that. But if you need a particular event insurance for a particular event, then that is an overhead, that is a cost that you can put in your budget. Okay, so that's just a tip there. You might be giving out some door prizes. So you've got flowers from the florist there, your social media promotion. So that's a $50 cost in there. Your printing of posters by maybe your CRC or whoever, and then a newspaper advert as well. So when you're applying for a grant, the funding bodies really want to make sure that you are advertising it. You are advertising it. So every single time you have a grant, you need to make sure that you assign a line item for advertising, for a newspaper article or a poster in your newspaper, and then follow it up with an article in newspaper about what the event, because funding bodies love that exposure, and that is something that you can put you can put as part of your grant expenditure. So yeah, it's very useful. So when you have, I'm not advocating that you apply for things that aren't necessary, of course, but please do consider things that you might feel that they might not be necessary, but advertising and things like that are a given for every grant application, really. So this is what your budget tab looks like filled in. If you click onto the next tab, within that, there'll be a blank one. So this column here is the quoted costs, as I was talking about. If it's got GST, you put yes or no, and it will then quote you the total amount less GST if you need to submit that. So if you're not registered with GST, the grant will say, what is your total budget cost excluding GST? You'll need to work that out. This actually does it for you based on things there. So you've got there the sausage sizzle, for example, sausages, there's no GST. So the $50 we're spending on that is still going to be $50, okay? Whereas the soft drink that we buy, we're spending $50, we take the GST off it, it then becomes $45.45. So yeah, I won't give you a maths lesson, but it's all worked out there for you, hopefully. And then you can also use this budget spreadsheet for when you actually, if you get your grant, to put down the actual cost there, and you can use that in your acquittal as well, because you've already got those items that you budgeted for and what they quoted cost was, and then if you get the money, you pop that in, and you can actually put your actual costs in there to make sure that you keep to your budget when you're doing your grant. Okay. Any questions on the budget spreadsheet? Excuse me. No. I'm going to briefly touch on grants or sponsorship. So the purpose of a grant is basically to fund a project for a cause or initiative. So a funding body might, for the Department of Communities, might be a community-based grant, but a sponsorship might be is more to promote a brand or product. I see a lot of community groups approaching businesses for what they call sponsorship, but what they're actually asking for is a donation. And basically what community groups they go to a business and say, oh, we need new shirts for our football team. Can you pay for those for us? So what they're asking for is just literally a donation. They're not offering anything in return because the relationship of sponsorship is a two-way street. They give you the shirts, but you need to give them brand visibility and benefits. And if you're not giving them brand visibility and benefits, it's just a donation, and you're much more likely to get sponsorship as opposed to just a donation. So with grants, the relationship is there's no real direct return for the funder other than their KPIs, key performance indicators. Sponsorship is the expectation of brand visibility. The application for grants is usually quite competitive, whereas a sponsorship application is usually much more direct and negotiated. I would always recommend, if you're putting in for a sponsorship to a business, you put in what you want, and then you put in a higher amount than you would want. I'm not sure what the psychology of it is. I'm sure it's called a particular thing, but if anyone has children, you see how they negotiate. They go for a bag of lollies, and knowing that they won't get a bag of lollies, but they'll get a lolly. And so when you're looking at sponsorship, I would always include options and include a higher option that it's quite possibly too extravagant for them, but so that they will actually go for a lower one. Hope I've made that quite clear. Little tip there. The use of funds for grants is restricted to those budget items that you've put in. But when you're looking at sponsorship, it's very much more flexible, and it's used much more for marketing and promotion as well. The expectations of grants is a focus on project outcomes based on the grant submission and the funding body, what their key performance indicators might be. Whereas for sponsorship, really, it's just the marketing benefits and visibility. I mean, you're basically advertising for that business that you got the sponsorship for. So those are the differences. When you're looking at getting some sponsorship from a particular business, approach the right sponsors. Do not waste your time sending out 40 emails to 40 businesses. Approach the right ones. So look at those sponsors in your area that are relevant to your community group. And also, I, as a business owner, was quite often approached by random sponsorship letters asking me for the donations or sponsorship from people who I'd never met. And I had a hospitality business, so they'd never actually walked through the door, so I didn't actually know them. Whereas I'd been directly approached by people who had come through the door, who had come to my establishment, and I was much more likely to offer them sponsorship. So approach the right sponsors. Do not waste your time sending random anonymous requests there for sponsorship. Making sure that you have a clear and professional proposal. So for the sake of a phone call, find out who the email should be addressed to. It can go a long way. I know many businesses, they're very tightly strapped with state funds. If you haven't even made the effort to find out who you should be addressing, they'll just throw it in the bin. So a clear professional proposal. Make sure that you, for sponsorship, because we're talking about marketing, make sure you're clear to the sponsor about what your reach and audience will be in terms of, what's in it for them. Well, we have a mailing list of X. We have a Facebook with X number of followers. You really need to show them the benefits, and that's all about the reach that you have and the audience that you have. Build a professional relationship. So I highly recommend you don't just send us a request for sponsorship and then that's it. If you are successful in sponsorship, make sure you invite those sponsors to your end of year wind up. Make sure you include them in your newsletter. Make sure that you tag them on Facebook. I've actually been phoned up by many when I've applied for sponsorship. And I've actually been phoned up by businesses thanking me for posting that they sponsored us. And I was like, well, yeah, that was part of the agreement. And they said, you'd be surprised how many people do not thank us publicly. And it's so simple. So you've got to build and maintain that professional relationship. So next year, when you want another set of jerseys or some additional funding for XYZ, you've already got that relationship, and they're not just going to go, oh yeah, you again, is it? And throw your application in the bin. And be transparent and show return on investment. Like, what are they going to get out of it? What's the benefit for them? Put yourself in their shoes. Count of exposure is a really good way to show how you can get a lot of reach with your application, with your engagement with people. So, for example, this is an absolute classic. You can potentially reach over 300,000 people with a particular program or activity. And you can put that on your grant application quite simply by the advertising and marketing you do. So, for example, the local newspaper, if you had a poster in that, how many editions do they print? Maybe they print 5,000. There you go, 5,000 newspaper. Can you get it heard on local radio? Okay, well, what's their anticipated audience? That's got to usually be at least 200,000 people. So Triple M or something like that. And then you've got things like your local government newsletters that they send out. They would have usually at least maybe 10,000 people on that. Maybe you would post it on the local community board. Well, there's 15,000 people on that. So you're not guaranteed to reach every single one of those people, of course, but if you include that in your grant submission and your return on investment, potentially the exposure of the relationship that they have with you can reach a lot more people than you would just say by, oh, we're a very small group of 8 people. Potentially, you can reach a lot more people. And so, yeah, it shows a great benefit to them to be involved with you. That's my little tip. Okay. So, and yeah, just in terms of grants and sponsorship, the only difference between the two is maybe you still need to do your research, still need to be grant ready, still have a budget, still have your achievements. Supporting letters aren't necessarily needed for sponsorship, really, and acquittals as well. They tend to be more for actual grants, less sponsorship. There is a government website. This is for federal grants, and it's very easy to sign up to it. And then they will send you an email of any grants based on the keywords that you've entered that are available. Now, excuse me, that's for federal grant funding. I've been applying for grants for over 15 years, and I would probably say that it's less than 10% of the grants that I apply for as a community group, but it's a free service. So it's a set and forget. They will send you an email about any grants. So yeah, it's worth doing. It's worth signing up for. Okay. Okay, we've gone back to, apologies. Some of the tools that will help you get grant ready. I've talked about Gmail and the Google Drive, where you can store information so different people can access that. We've obviously got the Microsoft suite of Excel documents, PDFs, forms. Google Forms is a great little tool. So if you're needing to do surveys to maybe look at the need for, I know, I've just applied for Great Game On Grants, which is a grant for encouraging girls to stay in sports, age 13 to 17. I'm going to use my Google form to survey that age bracket to find out what would make them stay in sport. And so, yeah, it's a very, very, very simple tool. You can use things like SurveyMonkey. However, my experience with SurveyMonkey, it's a great tool, but the free access gives you only limited tools in there. And usually what happens is I create this great survey, I get to the end and it's like, well, those aren't covered on the free plan. So I highly recommend Google Forms. Then you've got things like, obviously, like ChatGPT and other AI tools. As I said, with a pinch of salt, I would never recommend anybody use ChatGPT to apply for a grant, in that you can recognize when people have used just a cut and paste from ChatGPT. So I definitely advocate in using it as a tool, but I think it's something to support you as opposed to write the whole grant for you, because that voice of your community group won't come through in any way. Then there's obviously things like Canva for posters and things like that. Paul, what's this signal? I've forgotten. Do you know what that icon's for? I can't remember.
Oh, that's Facebook Messenger.
Facebook Messenger, yes, of course, yeah. Okay, so that's for your, thank you very much, Paul. That's for communicating to your group, and also then we've got also a sign up zone, which I highly recommend. It's a free tool. So if you've got an event and you want to maybe you're asking for not volunteers, helpers, you're looking for helpers, you can create a sign up zone and people can go into it with a link. They don't have to log in, and they can see what are the gaps in the roster for an event, say. They can see who's doing when and then put their name down next to their mates or something. And it's just a really, really useful tool, rather than using something like Messenger about who can do this and what. It's a visual. I work very well with visual, so highly recommend that platform there, sign up. So another one of the attachments that I sent to you, and I know we're close to end. We've gone over a little over time, but I'll go through this very quickly. Is the grant list. So this is just a starter for you, the grant list. In blue, and I've sent this as an attachment. In blue, what we have is the actual funding bodies' home pages for their grants. And then what in pink are specific grants. So for example, Department of Communities website link for their grants is this, and this PDF, you can just click and it'll take you through there. But if you scroll down to the pink area, we've got Department of Communities. This is the Seniors Week grant. So it will take you through to there. Now, a lot of these grants are annual. So even if you've missed it this year, you can look at their who they funded last year. That's always a really good indicator of what kind of projects that they like. And then it will usually come up. Most of these, I mean, I think most of these grants that I've included do happen annually. So we've got Community Gardens grants. We've got Australia Post for mental health grants. So mental health, that's all about the way I approach that in terms of connection and social activity. Specifically, you could target youth, seniors, or these days in the epidemic of loneliness, to be honest, any demographic would benefit from a mental health grant and any particular activity. So this is a great starter to look at what grants are out there. I think there's 2 pages of it. So yeah, highly, highly useful. Australia Post, Beyond Bank, and look at things like Bendigo Bank as well. They have grants that are available. So you remember at the beginning, I talked about you have to change what you're doing to get a different result. And I congratulated you all by being here today because you're taking the first step. But if you think by just listening to all of this is enough of a change, it's not. What you actually have to do then is take the templates and start using them to save time. Okay? So in closing, if nothing else, I would say use the grant ready template. I mean, what's not to love? The next thing is to develop a wish list and a budget, get quotes, collaborate and delegate and maintain it. And then look at those grants, these annual grants, and explore, those groups that have already had funding from it that will maybe inspire you to, find the right type of funding for you. And when you're applying for grants, also use group email. Don't use personal emails. Yeah, we do. As I said, we do a separate course on tech and things like that. So you can head to our YouTube channel to look up for that. So yeah, and use your Google Drive to share documents, share your successes and achievements so that you can share the load. It's not just one person that's preparing for the grant, might be one person writing it, but you can delegate some of those tasks to help you fill in those first sections of the grant. So the resources I recommend, we've got the Town Team Movement website, the Act Local website, our YouTube webinars are on there. And Lottery West also has a great tool. I will be sending everyone an email in the next couple of days with a link to some of these things with the attachments again. And Lottery West is a really great tool for looking at outcomes and whatnot. And they do regular webinars as well. So you have the templates, you have the webinar. I'm going to also send you in a couple of days a little quiz to remind you. And yeah, I just encourage you to think about how you're going to make a difference and how you're going to change so that you get a different result. It's one thing to come along to a seminar, it's quite another thing to just maybe start filling in that grant ready template, because how many times can you look up your ABN or your Facebook link? Yeah, it's just very, very simple. So that is getting grant ready. Thank you very much for attending. I'm just going to turn off the screen sharing and the recording. Does anybody have any questions?